terror strikes in the night when the excursion steamer Noronic, packed with sleeping passengers, is destroyed by fire at a Toronto, Canada pier. A few hours of horror, and then all that is left is a gutted, smoking hulk, consumed by flames which have trapped people below decks in their cabins or forced many of them to leap into the water. Most of the doomed passengers were from Cleveland and Detroit. 189 perish, with many missing and few identified. The survivor is still unnerved.
I just wish that all the mothers who were on the boat with their children could be as fortunate as I am.
The first outstanding victory in the Cold War between East and West is the end of the 10-month blockade of Berlin. Charlottenburg Station is again linked with Western Germany as trains begin to roll into the once isolated city. The steady stream of trucks start the movement of supplies, and though the magnificent American and British airlift had fed Berliners, they are no longer on short rations. Determined countermeasures force Russia to ease a dangerous situation. With the Red Army conquering China, fear-ridden Shanghai crowds see nationalist soldiers vent their fury upon suspected communist sympathizers who are executed in the streets with little ceremony. In a mood verging on panic, a crowd of 100,000 battled police to witness the executions as stark terror stalks the city. The end of all chance of democratic freedom approaches. The Red Army is at the gates. Communist shore batteries trap the British cruiser London in the Yangtze. 44 men are lost before she escapes to Shanghai, badly battered. Americans and British leave by every means possible. Some have to be carried aboard trains as the traditional open door in China is slammed shut. With a flat ultimatum from Red authorities, civil and military contingents depart to avoid clashes that could spark a third world war. Nuns who have spent their lives in religious teaching know that communism will not tolerate them. Shanghai becomes another red outpost. Philadelphia plays host to the 31st National Convention of the American Legion, led in parade by regular Army men honoring the victorious veterans of 2 world wars. The youngest drum majorette is an attraction, and though it's summer, Santa Claus comes from Indiana. A Minnesota post is costumed colorfully in a spectacle of more than 60,000 men and women marchers. $50,000 of Rome's schoolchildren throng the Piazza San Pietro in Vatican City to greet Pope Pius on the 50th anniversary of his priesthood. His Holiness is touched by their devotion and declares that it is among the children of today that his hopes lie for a world that will not destroy itself. Lester Pearson, Canada's minister, signs. Robert Schumann, French foreign minister, joins his country with democratic nations. Ernest Bevin of England signs the agreement to aid any signatory nation attacked by an aggressor. United States Secretary of State Dean Ascherson signs, and President Truman keynotes our nation's reason for the historic pact.
The treaty we are signing here today is evidence of the path they will follow. If there is anything certain today, if there is anything inevitable in the future, it is the will of the people of the world for freedom and for peace.
Later, the President signs the bill providing funds for military aid to Atlantic Pact nations. The crew of a rescue plane looks down in horror on scenes of devastation in Ecuador as violent earth shocks continue. Frightened people run aimlessly about. Others, numbed by terror, simply stand bewildered and helpless. 6,000 people perish, 25,000 are injured, 100,000 are homeless. In this ancient church, a priest was officiating at a children's mass, and now its granite walls are all but leveled. A grim search for injured is started as soon as nature's fury has abated, but it's difficult to evacuate hospital cases. Roads are blocked, rivers are swollen, all forces seem bent upon heaping an agony of suffering upon those already sorely afflicted. Practically the entire Western Hemisphere rallies to the help of Ecuador, many times shapen by quakes, but rarely suffering such ruin, horror, and grief. Suddenly erupting, one of the few active volcanoes of North America puts on a spectacular display that terrifies the people of this section of Mexico. Mount Paracutin sends up nature's fiery warning that beneath the Earth's surface there may still gather the forces for destruction to dwarf anything conceived by man. Only 4 years ago, this volcano wiped out a village and changed a fertile valley into a wasteland. Now a daring cameraman makes these films until heat drives him back and the volcano continues pouring forth molten rock from a witch's cauldron.